Thank you, Narendra sir. I thank Chanakya University for giving me this opportunity for interaction. So today we are here with a single-minded purpose of understanding how to face exam in each of the streams in second PUC. And here, if you're ready, we shall start the Economics Express. Now, I call this the Express because we have 1 hour of time. I shall present the essence of understanding second PUC economics, basically in English, but also in Kannada if you need. And at the end of it, kindly let me know what are the specific doubts and questions we have. From the syllabus, I have chosen those areas which are considered slightly more easy and important because it's an online mode and we have time limited. So I shall go on explaining the concepts. Please understand, concepts you can write in your own words. So I'll explain the concepts that you come across in second PU syllabus, micro and macro concepts, amele how to answer them. So if you're ready, let's begin. So your second PUC first chapter is Introduction to Microeconomics. So economics, all of you know, is a science of choice. How to make the best use of the limited resources for unlimited wants. That is the study of economics. So economics is a science of choice in deciding what resources, how to make use of the resources to satisfy our unlimited wants, not only now, also in the future. So economics is a science of choice and economics is a science of growth. What is an economic system? Now, economics, there are 6 dimensions you have to understand. Economics, first one is consumption. Please understand, consumption is making use of goods and services. We were all born. What is the first sense that develops in a newborn child? Sense of taste. So we were all born to consume, eat. Because it's consumption, things have to be produced. So we study about production. Because things get produced, it needs to be exchanged, purchased and sold. We understand exchange. Then because it gets exchanged, there's distribution of income. So 4 dimensions, distribution. Plus you have public finance and economic planning. So there are 6 dimensions in economics. Please understand, it's called scope. Consumption, production, exchange, distribution, public finance and economic planning. The first 4 dimensions are orderly. Consumption, production, exchange and distribution. So arrangement of these 4 dimensions in the economy, this is called economic system. In Nalaku system, Nalak dimensions, how does it work in the economy? Adana economic system. Now, what are the basic economic problems? What any science is trying to solve a question, trying to solve a problem. So economics aimed questions solve try. These are called basic economic problems. There are 3 basic economic problems. What to produce? Now, why this question is important? Because resources limited, wants are unlimited. So you have to choose what to produce. Anything from spending your money on a birthday to how to use investment. What is that you have to produce? First question. From individual to even the country or the world has to decide what is more important. Now, that's the first question. Second question is how to produce. Please understand, essentially, how to produce a method of production. Capital intensive, labor intensive technology. Capital intensive is using machines. Labor intensive is using humans. So in a country like India, what is the best technology to adopt? Is it capital intensity or labor intensity? Third question is for whom to produce. Now in a produce model, we have to decide who are the buyers and what should be the pricing. Say for example, by starting a hospital or a hotel or a school or even a car factory, you have to decide if you're starting a school, who are students going to be? Is it for the very poor children? Is it going to be the very rich? Is it going to be the international? Similarly, on the car produce model, you got Tata or Nano produce model. That's for the poor man's car. So at the same time, you have BMW and Benz, which is for the elite. So whenever you produce something, you have to decide who are going to be the buyers and what should be the price of them. So these are the 3 essential questions: what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce. These are called basic economic problems or central economic problems. Now, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಮ್ಗೊಂದು question concept ಇದೆ production possibility curve ಅಂತ ಅಥವಾ production possibility horizon. Production possibility. I told you that every country or individual have limited resources, but unlimited wants. So ಈ limited resources ನ unlimited wants satisfy ಮಾಡ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡುವಾಗ ರಿಸೋರ್ಸ್ ಯೂಸೇಜ್ ನಾವು ಮ್ಯಾಪ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಪ್ಲಾನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಪಾಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಕರ್ವ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು helps us to distribute the resources between two selected commodities in such a way that we get the maximum possible production. The example again, for example, take a country. It has got limited resource. It can either spend it on security or it can either spend it on essentials like health and education. Both are important. So production possibility curve tells you how, for example, a country like India, then the Karnataka state government budget bantu, how the limited resources can be distributed in such a way that we can produce the maximum possible commodities. ಇದನ್ನ ತೋರಿಸೋ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟೇ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಪಾಸಿಬಿಲಿಟಿ ಕರ್ವ್ ಅಂತ. Then please understand, I said economic systems ಅಂತ. How consumption, production, distribution, exchange and distribution is managed. There are three essential ways of organizing it. ಇದನ್ನ ನಾವು types of economic systems ಅಂತ ಕರೀತೀವಿ. We have a capitalistic system, we have a socialistic system, and we have a mixed economic system. Capital ಅಂದ್ರೆ funds, money. Capitalist system ಅಂದ್ರೆ countries like Europe or USA. Here, capital is important. That means the government will not interfere in economic activities. It is based on a principle called laissez-faire, let free, private enterprises. Socialist economy, and everything is controlled by the state. So the government will decide what will people eat, what will people see, where will they work. So the resources is controlled by the state or the government. This is called socialism. Countries like India have a mixed economic system, wherein we have private schools, we have government schools, we have private hospitals, we have government hospitals, we have private television channels, government television channels. So where there's a mix of both comes under mixed economic system. So capitalism is under the free, everybody is free to do what business they've intended to do. Socialism is controlled by the state or the government, and mixed economic system is a combination of both, like in India. And here, please understand, this is called classification of economic system, three systems. Then we come to nature of economics. What is the nature of economics? And the economics and science is what kind of science? Please understand two very important things. One is normative and positive science, and the distinction is there. Normative science and those sciences which not only explain things as they are, but also tell you whether that's right or wrong, good or bad. Adana now normative science anta helteve. Positive science andre those sciences which studies things as they exist, but does not say whether it's right or wrong, good or bad. For example, physics is a positive science. Now physics will explain you how when you split an atom, energy is released. It will never say that's right or wrong, good or bad. It will tell you about solar system, how sun is the center of our solar system, planets move around. It will never say that's good or bad, right or wrong. So with the nuclear bomb, you can either create energy or destruction, but physics will just explain things as they are. At the same time, a study like philosophy, sociology, it will tell you about, say, caste system. It says caste system exists, whether it's good or bad, right or wrong. Now, economics is both a positive and a normative science. For example, some people may study economics, poverty in India. So 40% or 35% people in India are very poor. Adhanondu statement madbodu. It's a positive statement. Somebody might interpret and say that is not a good development. We should not have. So economics also makes statements. It also makes value judgments. So economics is both positive and normative science. This is a very important feature of economics. And micro and macro, the distinction is there. When you study individual units, it's called microeconomics. When you study individual production, individual price, it's micro study. Microscope of the sun, micro study. When you study large aggregates, for example, unemployment in India, national income in India, these are large studies. So idanna we bring it under macroeconomics. So if you study things individually, it's called micro. If you study things in large aggregate, it's called macroeconomic study. Both are important. If you want to study the price of a commodity, ಯಾಕೆ ತರಕಾರಿ ಅಥವಾ ಪೆಟ್ರೋಲ್ ಬೆಲೆ ಯಾಕೆ ವೇರಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ it's a micro study. If you want to study India's development, that's a macro study. So this is how economics is structured. Meaning, feature, production possibility curve, basic economic problem, and nature of economic systems, but the nature of economic science. This covers the first chapter. So I want you to understand basic economic problems, but the classification of economic systems. So we'll go to the next. I told you, please remember, ನೀವು ಯಾವುದೇ ಟೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಬುಕ್ ನೋಡಿದ್ರೆ ಎಕನಾಮಿಕ್ಸ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗೋದು ಫಸ್ಟ್ ಕನ್ಸಂಪ್ಷನ್ ಇಂದ, ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಪ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಹೋಗುತ್ತೆ, then you get into exchange markets, fourth you come to distribution. ಅದೇ ಫಾರ್ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ even the structure is designed. So the next chapter is consumer behavior. Consumption ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಏನು? Making use of a commodity to satisfy one's wants. Eating food to wearing dress to making use of technology, living in a house, these are all consumption process. The most important thing here is law of diminishing marginal utility. Diminishing ಅಂದ್ರೆ decreasing, marginal ಅಂದ್ರೆ additional, utility ಅಂದ್ರೆ want satisfying power. Please understand, ಇದು economics ಅಲ್ಲಿ a fundamental law of diminishing marginal utility, which says continuously when you keep on consuming a certain commodity, the additional satisfaction goes on diminishing. For example, you may love some chocolates, but you can't keep on eating continuously. You may like to watch some movie, some hero or some heroine movie, but continuously you can't keep watching it. So similarly, this session, it's kept for 1 hour. Imagine if I take this session for 2.5 hours, you'll be not able to pay attention. So law of diminishing marginal utility, when you continuously consume a commodity or service, the additional satisfaction goes on decreasing. So after a point of time, say, no, I can't have it anymore. This is called DMU, law of diminishing marginal utility. Now, addition to this, ಇದು basic law of consumption. ಇದಾದ್ಮೇಲೆ we have a law based on ordinal theory ಅಂತ. Now, the ordinal theory is basically about how do we understand indifference curve approach. Please note, whenever we try to consume anything, we always try to consume a combination of commodities. To explain this, we came out with indifference curve approach. Here, from exam point of view, understand the properties of indifference curve. I'll explain that. I'm not going into detail, but understand properties of indifference curve. What is an indifference curve? Indifference andreno? Indifference is an attitude of neglect. It makes no difference to me. Now, ಯಾವುದನ್ನು neglect ಮಾಡ್ತೀವೋ ಅದನ್ನ indifferent ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವೆ. So indifference curve andreno? It's a line, it's a curve which shows the combination of two commodities. All right? It shows combination of two commodities which gives the same level of satisfaction. So therefore, if you ask him, in a curve there are many points with different combination. If you ask him, do you want combination A, B, C or D? He says, it's okay. Give me A or B or C or D. All does not make any difference to me because all give the same level of satisfaction. So please understand, indifference curve shows combination of two commodities which gives the same level of satisfaction. Therefore, the consumer is indifferent to any combination. He says, it's okay, give me A or D because all give me the same level of satisfaction. It's the properties. First one is indifference curves are negative slope. Andre left to right, it comes downwards. Adra artha enu andre X and Y variable ideyala, two commodities, their relationship is inverse. Andre if one commodity is increasing, the other is decreasing. So therefore, because if you're, for example, I'll give you an example of say two fruits, apple and oranges. If you're increasing the consumption of apple, you have to reduce the consumption of orange. If you don't do it, your satisfaction will affect it. So therefore, it has a negative slope. Then they are convex to the origin. Convex, I'll show it in the notes. It means there's a concept called MRS, marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution means the rate at which one is being substituted by another. This goes on diminishing. Third one, indifference curves do not touch or intersect each other. In an indifference map, only balastu levels of satisfaction irutte. These different levels of satisfactions are shown by different indifference curves. We call it ICs. But no two ICs will touch or intersect each other because each ICs have different levels of satisfaction. So even at one point, touch madidre, that means two ICs have same level of satisfaction. That's not possible. So no two ICs will touch or intersect each other. And finally, very important quality or feature is higher the IC indifference curve, greater the level of satisfaction. So as a consumer, you're always trying to move up to the maximum possible satisfaction at the highest level of IC. So the question for the exam is properties of ICs you have to explain. Focus on these four, right? Then how do we understand how can we maximize our satisfaction? Economically, you have come across a concept called equilibrium. Equilibrium means a state of maximum possible satisfaction. So with IC, how does a consumer get the maximum possible satisfaction? See, for example, ಒಂದು indifference map ಇದೆ. There is 10 indifference curves there showing 10 different levels of satisfaction. If you ask anybody which level of IC would you want to be, he will always say, I want to be in the highest possible IC 10, IC 10. But that depends on what is the income he has, what is his budget. Therefore, after you draw the indifference map, you have to take into consideration what is his budget. So with a given budget, maybe he's able to touch only IC5 or IC4. So therefore, budget line is the line which shows what is the maximum possible commodities he can purchase or consume. And therefore, every individual is trying to maximize his satisfaction. So, in an ordinal approach, literally you have to understand the meaning of IC, properties of IC, and what is a budget line. So understand IC. IC is a line which shows the combination of two commodities which gives the same level of satisfaction. And budget line is a line which shows the maximum possible consumption of two commodities you can have. This is about consumer behavior. Then we come to law of demand. Very simple. It's a very compulsory question. State and explain the law of demand. When the price of a commodity increases, demand decreases, and when the price decreases, demand increases. So law of demand has an inverse or a negative slope. Now, why this happens? It happens because when the price decreases, people buy more because they know if they buy more or consume more, anyway, the satisfaction is going to be less. Remember, law of diminishing marginal utility. So when I know if I consume more, anyway, my satisfaction will be less. Why should I pay more for that? So I'll buy more only if the price also reduces. So the reason why law of demand operates is because law of diminishing marginal utility. Now, understand two more important questions. Elasticity of demand. Please note, ಈಗ ಒಂದು example ಕೊಡ್ತೇನೆ. Let's take something like a medicine ಅಥವಾ salt. Just because salt became cheaper, will you buy more of it? No. Just because salt became expensive, will you buy less of it? No. So there are commodities whose demand does not change with price. At the same time, take fruits. If some fruit has become less expensive, we buy more of it. If some fruits is more expensive, we buy less of it. All right. Take sugar. Sugar, if it becomes expensive, we don't stop buying it, buy a little less. If it becomes less, we buy a little more sugar. So you understand there are commodities which change differently for a change in price. This is called as elasticity of demand. What is elasticity? Flexibility. So elasticity of demand says how the demand changes with a change in price or income. So elasticity of demand is the rate of change in the demand for a commodity for a given change in the price or other determinants. Ideally, please note, you have to consider the factors which influence elasticity of demand. Okay, that's consumption. So in demand chapter or consumer behavior, please note what is law of diminishing marginal utility, study about it. Then the meaning and properties of indifference curve, The meaning of budget line and law of demand is very important. And also the meaning and factors influencing elasticity of demand. Pay attention to it. All right. Then we come to the next chapter. After consumption, we go to production. Because when people want to consume, somebody has to produce it. See, these days, nobody consumes a film camera. I'm sorry, camera film. You used to have those kind of things. Now nobody produces it. If you just take a look around, does anybody make a radio these days? Very rarely, because people have all these in their phone. So when people are consuming, somebody is producing it. When they don't consume, nobody produces it. So now, after consumption, we come to production. Now, what is production? You will say production is creating something new. Not really, because man or humans cannot create anything new. Everything is given in nature. We are just converting them. So production means the process of adding utility to something which is already existing. Take the dress we wear. We didn't make the cotton. Cotton is given by nature. We made it into a yarn and made it into a cloth. So we changed its form. So we added utility. We didn't make the furnitures. We just took the wood from the trees and made it into furnitures. So we just changed its shape and added utility. Iron and steel, to everything that you see around is given in nature. We are just trying to add a little utility, and this process is called as production. So what is production? Production is a process of adding utility to a commodity or service. All right. Now, for example, teaching or education is a productive activity. Are we creating something new? No. Students are already there. By giving them some additional knowledge and information, we are making them a little more employable, little more knowledgeable, little more ready for industry and entrepreneurship. So this process of adding utility is called as production. Please keep that in mind. And there are four essential factors of production: is land, labor, capital, and organization. Land is just everything given by nature is land. Everything that's a part of nature is called land, including water and forest. Labor, everything that's contributed by humans is called labor. Capital, everything that's made by man but used in production is called as capital. And finally, organization. The enterprise, the businessman who brings other three factors together is called as an organization. So if you want to produce something, you should have these four factors with you: land, labor, capital, and organization. In this, please note, so you have to understand the factors and meaning of production. I'll go to the law of variable proportion. What is a law? Law basically explains the relation between two factors. In law of demand, the relation between price and demand. In law of production, we try to understand the relation between input, raw materials, and output. So please note, law of variable proportions explains the relation between input and output. Very simple, please understand. Whenever we want to increase the production, which is called output, you have to increase the input, raw material. So this law of production says, when you keep on adding more and more of input, that is land or labor or capital, you can add all three or one of them or two of them. When you increase input, the output will increase definitely, but it will increase in three different stages. In the beginning, it will increase at an increasing rate. You put one input, you get two output. This is called increasing rate. You again keep on adding, it will increase at constant rate. You add one input, you will get one output more. And third stage is you keep on adding, after some time, it starts decreasing. You add one input, you get only half output more. So law of variable proportion says, as you keep on increasing the rate of input in production, the returns increase at increasing rate initially, later at constant rate, ultimately tends to diminish. So please note three stages: stage of increasing returns, stage of constant returns, and stage of decreasing returns. This is called law of variable proportions. So law of variable proportion explains the relation between input and output and how they change in three different stages. See, it applies to everything. For example, you computerization in banks. There were too many people working, so banks wanted to computerize. So you add computers, efficiency improves. You keep on adding computers, then efficiency becomes constant. But imagine a bank branch where there are more computers and less people, then efficiency reduces. This is take agriculture. You introduce a little tractor or irrigation facilities, output increases. Keep adding more fertilizer, the output keeps on rising accordingly. But after a point of time, you keep adding fertilizers and machineries, the output doesn't increase proportionately, it starts decreasing. This is what. So production, law of variable proportions. Three distinct stages: increasing stage, constant stage, and decreasing stage. All right, understand this law. Now, in production, let's go to cost. There are two very important things: cost and revenue. What is cost? Cost is expenditure, revenue is income. So the amount of money spent on production is called as cost. The amount of money earned by selling what you produce is called as revenue. In this cost, there's a simple problem you will get, easy to solve. Understand cost as total variable cost and fixed cost. There are expenditures which don't change. They are called fixed cost. And there are expenditures which changes. They are called as variable cost. Imagine you have a factory and you pay rent to that shed or the premises. Now, even if you produce 100 units or 1 unit, the rent remains the same. That's a fixed cost. But imagine raw materials, power supply, that changes according to production. So if there's an expenditure which changes according to production, it's called variable cost. If there's an expenditure which does not change with production, it's called as fixed cost. All right, pay attention to these concepts. It's a simple problem. It helps you to score good marks. Then after production, we come to exchange. You know what is exchange? Exchange is buying and selling. And what is the process of buying and selling called? Process of buying and selling is called as market mechanism, market rather. So market is defined as a process, not just a place, process of buying and selling commodities for money or some medium of exchange. So the process of exchanging goods and services is called as market. It used to be a place, now where's a place for Amazon, but it's still a market. So therefore, market is a process of buying and selling goods for money. In that, when you talk about market, there are different types of market. There's a perfect market and there's an imperfect market. Now, what is a perfect market? Please note, in a market, there are two sets of people, the buyers and the sellers. When there is a perfect competition between buyers and sellers, it's called as a perfect market. Now, what do you mean by perfect competition? It is, as a buyer, when I go out to buy something, I can choose to buy from whomever I want. It's like going and buying vegetables. If I don't like A person, I can go to B, C, D, any number. There are so many of them. So when I can choose perfectly what I want to buy, it's a perfect competition. Similarly, I go to buyer A, a seller A, and I didn't like what he offered. So I move on to seller B. Now, the seller will not fall at my feet and say, please buy from me. Because if it's not me, he's got 1,000 other customers. So when there's perfect choice for both buyers and sellers, it's called as a perfect market. All right. In here, who decides the price? In a perfect market, the market demand and supply decides the price. For example, why do you think the petrol prices are going up or down? Gold prices change every day. Why? This gold price or petrol prices is being decided by demand and supply in the international market or in the Bombay bullion market. So similarly, why do the price of tomatoes or vegetables keep changing every day? It decided in the morning when the stocks come to the market. Based on the demand and supply in the market, every day the price of vegetables is decided. It's not single. You can't go tomorrow and start selling a vegetable, say, I will fix the price. That's not possible. So perfect market is where market demand and supply will decide what is the price. And every buyer and seller has a right to choose from where he wants to buy. Therefore, in a perfect competitive market, perfect competition, Every seller is a price taker. Taker means he takes the price decided by the market. He has no power to fix the price. All right. That is perfect market. So in perfect market, there are large number of buyers and sellers. One. Second one, the products are all the same. There's no distinction. A tomato is a tomato is a tomato. So wherever you buy from. And free entry and exit. Anybody can go into that market and sell, and existing people can also leave the market. Freedom to enter and exit. And every firm is a price taker. Tomorrow, if you want to start a business which is being done by many others, you can't fix the price. You have to follow the price that's fixed by the market. So that's called price taker. Now, here, although features, so the questions important here is, what are the features of perfect competition? How do you define a market? And very importantly, who is a price taker? Three important things, please note. All right. And then we come to the question of supply. Like demand, we understand supply. Demand is the quantity of any commodity that is desired by an individual, okay, desired by an individual, supported by ability and willingness to pay. I want a commodity, I should have the willingness to pay for it. I should have the money, ability to pay for it. What is supply? Supply refers to the quantity of commodity that is offered for sale in the market. Please understand, no producer sells everything that is produced. He keeps aside a certain stock because he sees if the price increases, I can sell it more. So therefore, supply is the quantity of commodity that is given for sale, offered for sale, not produced. So every seller tries to keep an inventory, a stock, to see how the prices are changing. If the price increases, he's happy, he gives more for sale. If the price reduces, he withholds the sale. Please understand, the law of demand says price increases, demand decreases, price decreases, demand increases. But the law of supply is exactly opposite. When the price increases, supply increases, and when the price decreases, supply decreases. So this is a fundamental relation you have to understand. That's the meaning of supply. Here, understand the meaning of supply and the law of supply. So law of supply is when the price increases, supply increases. When the price decreases, supply decreases. Now, very briefly, we'll go to the imperfect market, the markets which are not perfect. There are very, very different types of market where there are some limitations. Now, what is a monopoly? Monopoly is something like Indian Railways, all right? There is only one seller and many buyers. You have to go to that seller. For example, if you're traveling by bus, right somewhere at 10:30, he will stop the bus near a highway dhaba, and that's the only restaurant you get. Now he's a monopoly. So monopolies, there's only one seller and many people who are buying it. Therefore, the monopolist has complete control over the price. All right. Then oligopoly. Oligo means few. There are few sellers and many buyers. Take certain vehicles, take heavy trucks in India. Who? 3, 4 makers of heavy trucks. So when there are few sellers and many buyers, it's called as oligopoly. Now, what is the problem with oligopoly? These limited sellers, 2, 3, 4, 5, they'll come together and decide the price. It's like, say, air taxi operators in India or private air travelers, air service providers in India. They will decide the routes, they will decide the price. So oligopolies, few people coming together and deciding the price. A very good example for this would be the petroleum producing countries of the world. They have made an organization and they decide what should be the production and price of petroleum in the world over. So oligopolies, few sellers, many buyers. Your mobile service providers as an example. Now, then we come to something called as monopolistic competition. I told you about monopoly. We also saw about perfect competition. But right now, the market we have is called as monopolistic competition. It's a combination of monopoly and perfect competition. What does it exactly mean? So let's take something like mobile phones. There are so many mobile phones you can buy, but will you buy any phone? You have your preference: Samsung, Apple, Sony, Motorola. Take toothpaste. There are so many brands in the market, but will you go and say, give me some toothpaste? No, you have your preference. So, monopolistic competition is where there are many, many commodities and sellers, but each product is differentiated. There are so many brands of television in the market. Will you go buy some television, or you'll ask for a brand? So, monopolistic competition is there are many sellers of similar products, but which are differentiated. So, their selling cost is what you have to understand. Please note selling cost. These days, companies spend a lot of money not only producing goods, but also marketing them. This expenditure on marketing is called as selling cost. This is a very important part. Say, take something like Pepsi and Coca-Cola. To make a bottle of Pepsi and Coca-Cola hardly may cost 1 rupee, 1.5 rupee, or 2 rupees. But the amount of money they spend on marketing it is called selling cost. Why this is important? Because they want to brand it, they want to differentiate it. This is monopolistic competition. Now, therefore, understand the meaning of oligopoly, understand the meaning of monopolistic competition, and understand the meaning of product differentiation in this chapter. Then we get into macroeconomics. Now, what exactly is macroeconomics? Macroeconomics is studying the economy as a whole, getting the large picture. You open the newspaper every day, there's a lot of discussion on what is the inflation, what is the development rate, what is the GDP, what is the unemployment rate. These are important to understand how the economy is doing. So macroeconomics gives us a picture as to how economic system is doing. Are we developing? Are we progressing? Are things all right? So this is macroeconomics. In here, the most important thing is national income accounting. Just like people are assessed on the basis of the income they earn, countries are classified as rich or poor based on the income they generate. So national income refers to the total money value of all the goods and services produced in a country in 1 year. Otherwise, all the income earned by people of a country in a given year is called as national income. So based on this, countries around the world are classified into high income countries, middle income countries, and low income countries. So national income meaning is the total money value of all the goods and services produced in a country in 1 year. Otherwise, the total income earned by all the factors of production of a country in 1 year. Now, why this is important? It's important to plan development. It's important to compare countries. Why do you think many youngsters in India want to go to Europe and America? Because they think they are rich countries. And how do they think they are rich countries? They look at their national income, per capita income. Also, if we want to study whether India is growing, developing, we compare our income. What was our income 10 years ago, 5 years ago, or last year? How is it growing? Because this income rate is very important. Are we growing at 6%, 7%, 8%? So it helps in planning a country's development. All right. Now, when you're talking about concepts of national income, please understand the concept of GNP and NNP, GDP and NDP. Gross national product. Please note, gross is total. So total goods that is produced in a country and its money value is called as gross national product. But when you take total income, you have to consider something called depreciation. Therefore, when you take out depreciation, it is called net national product. Here, I request you to just know GDP, net domestic product, NDP, GNP, NNP, and personal income and disposable income. So these are how income concepts are classified. These material is given, so you can go through it to explain. Now, because of time, I'll move on. In money and banking, please have a good idea about the functions of money and the meaning of money. And what is money? Any medium of exchange is money, or a medium of exchange which is also a store and a measure of value, which can be used as a measure of value, which can be stored, is called as money. Here, The functions of banking, please note that. The functions of banking, please understand, any institution will become a bank if it does two things: accept deposits and advances loans. But when you study functions of banking, you have primary functions, which is accepting deposit and advancing loans, plus secondary functions, which are agency function and general utility functions. It's an easy concept. You may go through it. But please pay attention to functions of commercial bank. Then we go to functions of central bank. Which is a central bank? An institution which guides and controls the financial activities of a country is called a central bank. In India, the Reserve Bank of India is a central bank, which guides and controls the financial operations and controls the financial institutions of a country is called as central bank. So what makes a central bank central bank? Some important functions. Pay attention to that. First one is a central bank is basically issue of currency. It issues currency, controls credit, helps in developmental function, custodian of foreign exchange. These things have to be kept in mind. But the most important I will explain today is called as credit control functions. Please note, we are all worried about the increase in prices. Every day your parents talk about it, the ministers talk about it, everybody, leaders speak about prices rising and things like that. This price rise is called as a phenomenon called as inflation. The price is rising. When price rises, things become expensive, it affects the poor people. Therefore, the Reserve Bank of India or the central bank has to keep watching how the price is rising. The price, if rises marginally, it generates good profit, it generates good income, it generates good investment, and it's good for the country. But if the price rises, say in India, by more than 3%, then things become expensive and people will start worrying. People will stop buying. When people stop buying, demand for goods will fall. When demand for goods will fall, production gets affected. When production gets affected, unemployment will rise, everything goes down. Therefore, it's very important to keep the price rise at a minimal level to control inflation. Now, the Central Bank of India performs a very important function of controlling price level based on credit control mechanism. What is a credit control mechanism? Please understand, when we deposit our money in any commercial bank, the bank will not sit with that money. The bank gives it as a loan to somebody who wants it. Therefore, every bank is circulating money in the economy. It is actually increasing the money circulation and therefore money supply in the economy. If there is too much of money in the economy compared to the goods and services available, then things will become expensive. It's like you go to a theater to watch a movie. When the movie, all tickets are sold, you will find some 5 tickets there and people are selling in black. Only 5 tickets, but if 50 people want it, he will increase the price. That's what happens in an economy. Less goods, but too many people to buy, so price will increase. Therefore, the central bank has to make sure that the money supply is under control. This responsibility, this function is called as credit control mechanism or credit control measures. So what do you mean by credit control measures? Controlling the money supply in an economy to control inflation or price rise. All right? There are two methods of doing it: quantitative methods and qualitative methods. In quantitative methods, the central bank directly asks banks to control their lending. In qualitative method, the central bank says, no, don't send it to particular sector. Don't lend it to particular sector, lend it to other sector. You are lending or giving loans too much to service sector, too much to the IT sector, too much to the industry sector. Give more to agriculture sector, give more to rural sector. This is called qualitative. So quantitative is direct control. Qualitative, it directs where the money is going. This is a function of central bank of any country. And Reserve Bank functions. Be please noted that who is the governor of Reserve Bank of India? Anybody want to say? These general questions may appear. Where is the headquarters of Reserve Bank of India? When was it established? These are general knowledge questions, interesting to study. Anyway, today the Governor of Reserve Bank of India is one Shaktikanta Das. Now, we'll come to a very important concept called consumption and investment function. You may please ask questions. I've gone over some things. Now, please understand, in the 1930s, there was a major recession in the world economy. Started in the US, the economic system started going down. A lot of study was done, but one important study was done by J.M. Keynes, who was a very famous economist. So he gave the concept of, theories of consumption, investment. As a part of this, we study consumption and investment function. In that, how do you basically generate economic activity? So we basically generate economic activity by generating investments. And how do you generate investment? You generate investment by generating savings. So consumption and investment function basically deals with how you can influence investment through consumption and understanding that cycle. Now, coming to the government budget and economy, your question should be, what is a budget? Budget is an estimate of expenditure and income for the coming year. So if a budget is presented, the government is stating this is a proposed expenditure, this is a proposed income for the coming year. Three types of budget: surplus budget, deficit budget, and balanced budget. If the income of the government is more than the expenditure, it is called a surplus budget. If the income is equal to the expenditure, it's called balanced budget. If the income is less or the expenditure is more than the income, it is called as deficit budget. Please note, if somebody were to ask you a question, which budget is good for the government, surplus, deficit, or balance, it is not surplus budget. It is not balanced budget. Deficit budgets are good, but not too deficit, limited. Why I'm saying this? Because please note, government is not a profit-making organization. If the government is saying that I have more income than I'm spending, then it means the government is not doing enough properly. Some small deficit is important in a budget because the government is identifying new ways of developing, new ways of investing. But the deficit should always be in control. In India, FRBM Act says that the government should not exceed the deficit by more than 3%. Okay. So government names of budget and things. And fiscal policy. Understand two differences: monetary policy and fiscal policy. Any policy of the government which influences the quantity of money supply in the economy is called as monetary policy. And credit control measures are a part of monetary policy. And any policy of the government which influences the expenditure, the taxation, expenditure, and income is called as fiscal policy. So fiscal policy deals with taxation. All right. So that's a difference: fiscal policy and monetary policy. Finally, an open economy. An economy which is open for import and export is called as an open economy. Here you have to understand the difference between balance of trade and balance of payments. Every country has imports and exports. When you import, you have to pay money, the money goes out. When you export, the money comes in. So balance of trade is your total value of imports and exports of only commodities, visible goods. But balance of payments refers to the total value of money of both imports and exports of both goods and services. So if you look at a balance of payment, you will understand whether a country's situation of foreign exchange reserve is healthy, which means are we getting more income or is more money going out? So that's balance of payment and balance of trade. Now we are in the era of globalization. So the entire countries of the world is opening up, no restrictions on trade, movement, investment. Indians can travel abroad, export and import, and movement of people, movement of capital, goods and services, everything have been opened up. This is called an open economy called globalization. Have an idea of what are the advantages. Income improves, production improves, resource utilization improves, political and social understanding improves, employment generation, government revenue, all these are advantages of an open economy. Now, I stop here because of the time restrictions. If there's any question that you'd like to ask on any topic, I'd be happy to answer. As Sir suggested, we shall circulate these notes to you, so you can always come back to us. But if there's something you want to ask me now, please do. I know it was some kind of a express talk.
Students, you can throw the questions. You can ask questions.
Or perhaps it was too much of an English. Kannadalli ಬೇಕಿತ್ತು ಅಂತ ಕಾಣ್ತದೆ.
Question doubt ಇದ್ರೆ question ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲೂ ಕೇಳಿ, ಏನು ತೊಂದರೆ ಇಲ್ಲ.
ಸೊ ಇವರಿಗೆ ಸೆಷನ್ ಮಧ್ಯೆ ಒಂದು ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಇದೆಯಾ? ಈಗ ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ಒಂದು ಸೆಷನ್ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಸರ್ ಇವಾಗ ಬ್ರೇಕ್ ಇದೆ ಸರ್, 15 ನಿಮಿಷ.
ಓಕೆ.
Then we will end the session, sir.
Sir, please.